I'm back in a bike shop, I'm back at Woolies Wheels. We've been here before, we've built a mountain bike, and I'm here today for a different reason, very road cycling orientated and quite exciting. It's the release of the SRAM Red Etap AXS, or as some may say, AXS. Basically it relates to a whole rethink of gearing configuration, a complete upgrade to an electronic wireless shifting system, and an introduction of an electronic shifting system to the mountain bike range. What I would like to note before we get any further is that this is not a cheap proposition. AXS has been used in the pro peloton for over a year, and in January, Richie Porte enjoyed a victory on Old Wollonga Hill using the new Groupset as part of the Trek Segafredo team. A little interesting anecdote. There are two World Tour teams sponsored by SRAM in 2019, Katusha Alpecin and Trek Segafredo. In the past, we've gone to the Tour Down Under as ridemedia and we've visited the Tour Village. We've gone to each team's mechanic and asked if we can borrow one of their bikes. We take them up to a studio in the Adelaide Hilton, photograph the hell out of them and publish the details. Couldn't do that this year, and there were two exceptions to the rule. Trek Segafredo and Katusha Alpecin refused to let us borrow their bikes, not even for a second. And it was because the embargo on the release of SRAM's Red Etap AXS ensemble was on the 7th of February 2019. It was determined that way, so January was a write-off. We couldn't do what we usually do. And now I'm here in the bike shop with a completely new AXS ensemble and a fantastic Cannondale Super-Six Evo to build it to. It's worth noting that it was with the generous support of Monza that we got this ensemble. They were meant to ship it earlier in the week, but because of the embargo being strictly policed by SRAM, they weren't even allowed to put it with the courier until the day of release. That looks simply fantastic. But Dave Evans is from SRAM, as the t-shirt suggests. So SRAM Red Etap, is it AXS or AXS?
AXS.
AXS.
Yes.
But you're missing an I.
Yeah, we've dropped a vowel, I guess, in there, but AXS is the, I suppose, the integration that brings all the different parts together, not only from road, but from mountain bike, and also our new dropper post, the Reverb AXS as well, so they can all talk to each other through an app which you have on your phone. This
was a coming together of what was probably one of the worst kept secrets in the bike trade. We knew it was coming for a long time, but there was method in the madness. You didn't want to make an official statement until you were completely ready to go to market. You waited until a specific date. I think you even shifted that specific date back a little bit so that you would be ready from the factory and ready for distribution. The ensemble is being launched. It has been launched on the 7th of February 2019, more or less 3 years and a bit after the original Etap. It's a complete redesign, we understand all of that. What to you is the biggest highlight of it?
The biggest highlight is the gearing and the changes in gearing. Consumers and dealers and all that sort of thing, bike shops will need to get their head around the gearing, but it is really simple and it makes riding bikes nicer. You've got closer increments as far as your shift goes, and you've got a bigger range across the board.
And just quickly, the brakes haven't changed terribly much?
The brakes are fairly much the same. The calipers are carryover in the Red Etap AXS Groupset. The shifters are all different. The only two parts that really are similar or the same to the previous generation Etap are the calipers and the batteries which go into the front and rear derailleur. Everything else is all new.
The rear derailleur on this new ensemble is a clutch mechanism. It wasn't like that on the road group before, was it?
No, it wasn't, no.
And that's something you've brought over from mountain biking, or it's just a natural evolution that seemed logical with gravel riding becoming what it is?
Yes and no, I guess. It's an all-new clutch, so it's a hydraulic clutch. It only really engages when you need it. It's maintenance-free, you never need to worry about it. It sits inside. And when you need tension on the chain, it gives it to you. The rear derailleur can be used in both our 1x and 2x systems. So it's the one derailleur that does everything. The biggest cassette we have available is a 1033 cassette. So for some people, they may need, if they want to go bigger, they'll need to go the double up front, but some will still like the 1x with a 1033 option.
And when we've seen a little bit of customization, like when There's some ratios that's required the Y-fly, the extra long rear derailleur in the past.
Yep.
Is that the case with the new ensemble?
No, it's not. So the one derailleur does everything. So there'll be 3 cassette options. There'll be the 1026, the 1028 and the 1033 are the 3 cassette options for the road. The great thing about the new AXS integration is road shifters can now work with the mountain bike rear derailleur. So on a gravel bike, you could run the Eagle rear derailleur with a 1050 cassette with your road shifters. So there's all sorts of things you'll see in the future that that weren't really possible before with both our group sets and probably any other group sets.
And what about when you have a brute like Tony Martin who's asked for a 58 tooth, and I know SRAM had to engineer a special one for him when he was racing with Katusha Alpecin. What happens with an instance like that where you do need a monster big gear?
Okay, so initially on your standard group set, the pros will mainly run 50-37 combination. It will only be available in our red group set. So the 50-37 combination, you won't see it on many bikes at all that the bike companies bring out. It will really be that high-end pro level bike. So even on their standard road bike, they'll be running a pretty big gear when they hit that sprint in the 50-10. As far as someone like Tony Martin and his big gears, we'll have one by options for TTing, which he'll be able to run an even bigger gear again, I would imagine. But again, I haven't seen all that yet, but I know there's some pretty big chain rings available that work with the 10 sprocket. And by big, it won't be traditional big, it'll be big with a 10.
And just quickly, getting back to what we started talking about, and that was the fact that you had this deliberate dateline of how it was going to be released. If someone watching this video wants to buy it, are they going to be able to get it from their shop this week?
Yes.
Simple as that, for sure?
Well, supply and demand is a funny thing, Rob. So, and I know, having spoken to our 2 distributors, they knew there was going to be high demand for it, particularly in the aftermarket. And the aftermarket is the parts that you see in a bike shop that you buy.
All right, let's get the batteries on charge and start building.
Fantastic.
Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Okay, we've moved downstairs. We did the unboxing upstairs at Woolies Wheels, and now we're in the workshop, and I'm with Paul, who's helped me out with a mountain bike build. We got to know each other that day, and this is our second appearance together.
Yes.
I'm going to do very little, and I've talked a lot during the unboxing. I'm going to follow Paul around, observe what he's doing, and Andrew, who's behind the camera, is going to be getting nice tight shots, and we'll talk. Paul will offer his comments and appraisal of product as he gets to look at it and pop it on the Cannondale. Paul alerted me to the fact that it's SRAM Red Etap AXS. So I'll stop saying AXS. We've got that confirmed. The official line is AXS. We'll say that from now on.
So simply grab the end cap. That should come off usually easily, otherwise you can pop that in a vise. And then just push on the correct end caps, and that's all good to go. So this is like a 12mm axle on the front, which is pretty much standard for road disc now. Always got to line the logo up. That's normal. So we need to change the freehub body on this from standard 11-speed freehub that's already fitted to the XDR freehub body, which basically just allows us to run a 10-tooth cog as the smallest cog at the back, so your hardest gear, and that's one less tooth than you typically have. So these just pull off. drop some grease on. So then we just slide that on and pop our end cap back on. Make sure that the seal is good and fitted flush. Cool. The SRAM Red, the 12-speed, has a bigger range than you traditionally would get with other group sets, but it still has more one-tooth shifts. So your shifting is going to be smoother and you'll still have bigger range of climbing gears. So a little bit of a best of both worlds. XD is what was used on the mountain bikes, which this is based around the same system. The thing is, on the mountain bikes you had a 50-tooth cog, so you could dish that cog over the wheels, so they didn't have to make a wider freehub body, they just moved that last cog way closer to the spokes. On road you can't do that, there's not enough room, and if they were to try and do that, everyone would have to redish their wheels to the XD freehub bodies, which is a pain. So with XDR, it's 1.8mm wider than the standard XD freehub body, which means it just drops on and it's basically the same width as an 11-speed freehub body. So you don't need to redish, true your wheels, any of that. You just drop it on and that gives them enough room to have the 12 cogs on there, and obviously allows the 10-tooth. We've got a guide in there already, and then I'm just going to pull through the Quarq tool, cabling tool, which is really useful because this will thread into the end and will just make it a little bit easier to pull this through. Right on rear, left on front, cool. Really easy to get the cable through the rear, but it's going to be harder to get it through the front, so we'll use the guide for the front and then just meet it in the middle. So just put a few of these on. Because you don't want to build one of these and then for it to come back on its first service and it's rattling.
Dub. Durable, universal bottom bracket. There she is, in all her glory. The Dub bottom bracket, one answer to a complex question. And I suppose the thing that makes this so important is get this wrong, get the sizing wrong by a fraction of a millimetre, and your bike will creak and annoy the hell out of you. So in other words, what we want is for this to fit nicely into the Cannondale. It weighs in at 83 grams. Anyway, pop that in the box and we'll pocket it on the bike in a tick.
This is, we're not going to be gluing the bottom bracket in there or anything like that. It's just like a mild Loctite for press fit interfaces. Just reduces the chance of creaking. Yeah, that's like the Loctite 629.
Okay.
It's totally normal.
That's a real crack.
Yep, yeah. It's just like a press fit interface Loctite. It's pretty mild, and you're not going to have like any noise coming from that, but it will also come out super easy. So there's like quite a few different bottom bracket standards. Traditionally, it was all threaded bottom brackets. To be honest, like there's a lot of hate for press fit bottom brackets, but it's really not generally like the fault of press fit. Like a lot of the time we get bikes coming in for creaks and everyone thinks generally it's the bottom bracket, but a lot of the time it isn't. Most of the time it probably isn't. I don't really have anything against press fit bottom brackets. When they're done correctly, they work perfectly. You do need to make sure that you fit them properly. So for example, on like the Cannondale, it's quite a small area that it actually presses onto. So a little bit of Loctite really helps it. Dub is it's sort of between, so usually you'd have a 30mm axle or a 24mm axle, and dub is 28.99 or 29mm. But basically, if you tried to put a 30mm axle into like a British threaded frame or like some of the smaller press fit ones, the bearings have to be really, really thin, so you sacrifice longevity of the bearing. So dub, even though it's only a millimetre, it's enough to allow them to use a bigger size ball bearing in there. It's just a longer lasting bearing. The seals are more robust. So yeah, they're trying to run that through all of their systems now. So they're going to be less of the 24mm and 30, and SRAM are going to be moving pretty much to dub.
Moving on to the rear derailleur now, and this has got the hydraulic clutch. Have you used the hydraulic clutch before, or is that new for the?
No, that's brand new on bicycles. So that is like a sealed unit. That's like totally sealed unit. You can't service it. But it's really sealed off from the elements. You also can't fit one of those, the very large jockey wheels, like Ceramic Speed do them, the OSPWs. You can't fit those on there, but these still have ceramic bearings in there as well. And to be honest, if you were to fit those OSPW jockey wheels, there's a watt saving, but a little bit of a cost at shifting performance.
Jockey wheels have traditionally got quite slender teeth. Why are these so large? That's the trend that came from the mountain bike, isn't it?
Yeah, these are narrow wide, but only on the bottom. So it's like a narrow one and then a wide one, which matches up to the inner and outer links on the chain. Okay. Just gives a more secure fitting. They don't do it on the top one though. They did used to do that on mountain bike, and sometimes they'd skip, and then you'd be on the wrong tooth and you have to go back. So they run a more normal one at the top, but yeah, it's still got much larger teeth, just for chain security really. So I'm just sizing up for, there's a little shim that goes in here that like supports the derailleur against the frame. Yep. Which, yeah, the electronic group sets can put a lot more stress onto the braze-on mount. So each of the electronic group sets, like Shimano, SRAM and Campi, all tried to deal with this in some way. To be honest, I think Shimano probably have the best. They just have a set screw that screws in and butts against the frame. SRAM, you have this little wedge, which is a little bit more finicky. So I'm just doing the chain length first. Pretty straightforward. There's actually some really interesting information out there from Friction Facts, who's the guy who then went on to do the lubes with Ceramic Speed. He did a load of independent testing ages ago on chain lubes, chain efficiency, just so much interesting stuff. And one of them he did was factory chain lubes, and generally they're just pretty bad. They're pretty bad, so you don't really want them on there. Primarily the lube was there for really transport and storage and making sure the chain arrives in a good condition, whereas this is like much thinner, which is good. The new SRAM rotors, the spider in the middle is much wider, just to absolutely minimise the risk of getting anything stuck in there. And then the top of the rotor itself actually has like the edge is rounded off, even though there's no real genuine argument for them being super dangerous in normal crashes, because you have bladed spokes and cogs anyway. Like these are, totally safe, very smooth. So I think they're really trying to make sure that there's no real risk there. So to connect all of the parts together is really simple. The rear derailleur is sort of the starting point for this, and there's a little button on each of the components with a light next to it. So we'll do a long press on this button here until this light starts flashing green. There we go. And then we just go around each component and press and hold the button until we see like quick green flashes in succession. And that will show that the part has connected up to the rear derailleur. And to be honest, like the connections, we've not really seen any issues with connections on the first generation of Etap, which I think has been really good, because when it first came around, people were really kind of concerned that, you know, it's wireless, like there's going to be something that's going to go wrong, it's not going to talk properly, but yeah, it's been really good so far. We just got called out for a little bit by, thought that we couldn't get into the 10-tooth cog. Obviously should have known better, because yeah, when we're in the small ring at the front, it won't let us actually go into the small at the back, just because it's a really inefficient gear. It's not great for drivetrain wear. Yeah, a quick call to someone who knows better, and we are back on track. Yeah.
So you don't need that washer?
No.
It's wireless checking and a visible tap.
Really, first impressions count for a lot, and first impressions for a mechanic. What do you make of it? That's the first time you've built it, it's the first time you've sighted it.
Yeah, really impressed overall. Yeah, still kind of the same setup really as the previous generation, which was really one of the simplest group sets to put together and to connect. And yeah, shifting's been working really well. Yeah, we'd really like to ride it, to be honest. Yeah, some really amazing technology in there, and really keen to see how the gear ratios actually translate out on the road.
So it's been a long day, a lot of unboxing, a lot of building, and the result is what I reckon is a pretty spectacular looking bike. And the next test will be how she rides. But now comes the all-important weigh-in. Da 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 da. 7.070. So for a disc brake bike not that long ago, you wouldn't have thought that they'd come in under 8 kilos, but they're getting lighter, lighter and lighter. And got a whole new gear now, 12 speed. It's going to be something new. Looking forward to going for a pedal. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you with the next round of bike testing that we do. It'll be out.